Hello and welcome to the final video in my TMC First Wave 48 build series. And in this video, I'm going to compare the TMC tank with its nearest rival, the Fluval Evo 13.5. So I'll tell you all the similarities and differences between them and help you try to decide which one is best suited for you. If you've already seen the first couple of videos in the series, you will know that I asked TMC to send me this tank in order to make these videos, and that I'm going to be giving it away when I've finished. In terms of the Fluval Evo, this was actually loaned to me by my fellow YouTuber, Ryan from prestigereef.co.uk. So a big thank you to him, and I'll link his websites in the description below. All right, with all that being said, then we're going to get stuck straight in and we're going to kick off with the dimensions. They are very, very similar tanks indeed in terms of the size. The Fluval Evo is ever so slightly bigger in terms of water volume, but we're talking a couple of litres. And while it looks quite a lot taller, it's actually, the tank itself is only 2 centimetres taller. And the reason it looks taller, of course, is because it's on this large plinth and it has that floating cantilever effect. So the Fluval Evo is about 2 centimetres taller, but the TMC First Wave is about 2 centimetres longer. You could argue that the Fluval Evo makes it a little bit easier to stack your rocks high because it has that little extra height, but also that means that the TMC tank is slightly easier to stack your rocks longer because it's 2 centimetres longer, but the difference is so small that I don't think it's going to be a significant difference for either tank. Now there's one thing that's worth mentioning in terms of the size of both units, and that is that they both fit nicely on the IKEA Kallax shelving unit. Now I've seen loads of people do that with the Fluval Evo over time, so you know it's going to be strong enough to hold it. And it's great to have a cheap, stylish and readily available option in terms of a mounting stand. In terms of the design though, there are a few differences. Firstly, of course, the Fluval Evo has that floating cantilever effect, which I personally think looks really nice, and I think this is the nicer looking piece of furniture for your house if you're into that sort of thing. Although I have had people say that they prefer the look of the TMC tank, so let me know which you prefer in the comments below. But I think the Fluval Evo is that little bit more stylish. It also has honeycomb along the sides where the waterline is and along the back and the side where the filtration section is. The TMC tank has the same, but on the TMC one it's a sticker, it's a removable sticker, whereas on the Fluval Evo it is kind of this embossed, stuck on, almost painted on effect, which is a little bit nicer. So that's a marginal benefit for the Fluval Evo, and I think that does look a little bit nicer. And also around the back of the tank, the TMC tank has just a black vinyl backing so you can't see into it, whereas the Fluval Evo has a see-through honeycomb thing, which will make it slightly easier for you to see your filtration, although I would say that both of these tanks are likely to end up with the back against the wall, so that might not make a difference. And the only other significant difference in terms of the design is that the outlet for the water pump on the TMC tank is a single nozzle, whereas the Fluval, it has a dual nozzle. So in theory, it should dissipate the water a little bit more gently, although they both have very slow pumps, so it's not going to make a huge difference. The next areas to talk about is the filtration sections. They both have a little plastic bit on the back that just lifts off and exposes where all your filtration goes. But there are a couple of small differences here. In terms of size, they're very, very similar. The Fluval Evo is marginally wider front to back than the TMC, but there really is not much in it. But the main difference is that with the Fluval Evo, water comes in on the right-hand side by the weir cam over here, and it goes into the skimmer section. The skimmer is an optional extra not included with this, but it goes into the skimmer section. Then it has 2 other sections, so a total of 3 sections across the back. The section in the middle is where you put your filtration media, so your sponges, your bioballs, those sorts of things. And then the final section is where the return pump goes along with the heater. Whereas on the TMC tank, the water starts coming in on the left-hand side and goes into the smallest chamber, which holds your heater. The water then passes through to the skimmer section, and the skimmer is included with the price of this tank for free, whereas you have to buy it as an optional extra on the Fluval Evo. Then it goes into the third section, and there are 4 sections in total. It goes into the third section, which is where you put all your media, so your little Fluvo bioballs or whatever you choose to run, and your sponges and filters, those sorts of things. And then it goes into the final section, which is where you keep your return pump. So there are a couple of differences then. The Fluval has 3 sections, the TMC has 4 sections. To be honest though, both filtration sections are pretty decent, and I don't think either is necessarily better than the other. And what I found when I ran the Fluval Evo long term was that I just pulled out all of the filtration media anyway and just ran it on water changes alone. So it's not really a win for either, and they're both very similar. The first significant difference though is the equipment that comes with the tanks. The Fluval Evo has a return pump that sits on the left-hand side section here, and a basic light that sits on top, of course. The return pump I found when I ran this long term was a little bit buzzy and a little bit noisy, and that's because it's an AC pump whereas the TMC has a DC pump, which I'll come on to in a moment. And in terms of the light, it's really simple, and the options are basically white like this now, or blue, or off, and that is basically it. So you don't have the option for it to ramp up and down automatically, and you have to use a plug timer on this in order to set it to come on and turn off at the beginning and end of the day. And also, the other bad side is that it'll just be the same color all the way throughout the day, and you have to go and physically touch the button to turn it to blues at the end of the evening, which is what you really want, because for the last couple of hours, you want your corals to pop in that blue fluorescence. And this is where we have a big win for the TMC First Wave. Not only do you get more equipment, but the equipment is also better. So you get a return pump to start with, which is a DC return pump, which will be quieter. Although in my experience, in the first week of running it, it wasn't completely silent. It might be that it beds in and gets quieter over time. But anyway, it is definitely quieter than the return pump on the Fluval Evo. You also get the light built in, and you get an included skimmer. Now the skimmer is a DC skimmer as well, so it should be nice and quiet, although it's probably going to take a little bit of time tinkering around to get it quiet so you don't have bits of plastic touching the plastic glass and making vibrations. But the main area that the TMC has the Fluval lit is the light. So I'm just going to turn this light off with the control box so we can see how it works. Okay, so the control box here is very simple. It has one button. If you press it once, the light comes on white, and that will be all white all day long. If you press it a second time, it will go to blues, same as the Fluval Evo, and if you press it a third time, it goes to ramp up mode. And what you'll find with that is that it will ramp up for 15 minutes at the start of the day. So if you press that button at 10 AM, it will then ramp up for 15 minutes to its full light intensity, and then it will ramp down at the end of the day, and it will automatically switch over to blue lights for the last 2 hours. So you get that beautiful blue fluorescence at the end of the day, as well as the nice white light during the day. And that will happen automatically every day after that. You don't need to press the button every day to start it up again. It will just run on a schedule. And that's a really big win over the Fluval Evo, because the Fluval Evo is so basic, you just have to have it on a plug timer so it's on and off, and then you have to manually turn it to blue if you want, which you're not going to do every day. Whereas the TMC just does that automatically and will always ramp up nice and gently, so it has white colors through the day, then it will ramp down at the end of the evening and give you 2 hours of blue light, which will show off the fluorescence of your corals, and that is exactly what you want. But as well as having a skimmer, a more sophisticated light, and quieter equipment, the TMC also has 2 other trump cards, one of which I really like, and that is the plug. So this is just a 1-socket plug, but it has a 3-way splitter at the end, and that means that you have a socket for the return pump, a socket for the light, and a socket for the skimmer. So you only need 1 plug to run almost everything on this tank, and the only thing you'll need 1 more plug for is a heater, and that means that this tank can run off 1 double wall socket plug, which is really convenient. Now conversely, the Fluval Evo doesn't have that, so you will have 1 plug for the light, 1 plug for the return pump, and 1 plug for the heater. And actually, if you choose to get a skimmer as well, you'll have an extra plug for that, so you're going to need an extension lead, which just makes it a little bit messy. And the final benefit that the TMC tank has over the Fluval Evo is the guides. Now you get an included guide with both tanks, and that document with the Fluval Evo is just 1 large page. It's a fold-out guide that tells you all of the basics of how to get the tank set up and what maintenance you should be doing, that sort of thing. Now that is really useful, and I'm really pleased that Fluval include that, but the guide that you get with TMC is this little booklet that goes into loads more detail on everything from setting up the equipment to what fish you can choose, how you should feed your fish, the parameters you should be looking to maintain, all that sort of thing. So if you're an absolute beginner, this is a really handy guide to have, and it's a little bit more, quite a lot more advanced and quite a lot more detailed than the guide that you get with the Fluval Evo. Okay, it's probably fair at this point to say that the TMC tank has opened up a bit of a lead over the older Fluval Evo. But you don't get something for nothing in this world, so what's the price difference? Well, the TMC tank is £200, which of course includes the skimmer, but it's £200 and it's only come out relatively recently, so you don't see it discounted very often. In fact, you might find that it's not discounted at all for a little while. Whereas the Fluval Evo has been out for something like 8 years now, so this is discounted relatively often, and actually even without the discount, it's £150 on its own, so it is a fair chunk of change, cheaper than the TMC. The only thing to say on that, of course, is if you want to buy the Fluval skimmer, it'll cost you an extra £55, so it will take it actually to more expensive than the TMC tank, but I don't think most people will buy the skimmer because it's a bit buzzy and not that effective, and I don't think you really need it. So really the advantage that the Fluval tank has over the TMC on price is that it's 50 quid cheaper, and perhaps more to the point, you're more likely to find some secondhand that have had a few nice upgrades and are much cheaper. So those are all of the significant differences between the two tanks, and all that's left for me to do is tell you which one I would recommend. Well, quite simply, if this is your first tank and you don't want to spend a ton of money upgrading it, the TMC First Wave 48 has got it absolutely licked. That light alone is really good and much more sophisticated than the light in the Fluval Evo tank. It also comes with a skimmer, which, while not essential, is a nice thing to have, and it comes with quiet equipment and the three-way splitter into one plug, as well as that beginner guide that is a lot more detailed. But that doesn't mean I wouldn't recommend the Fluval Evo 13.5. I had one of these for a year or two and I absolutely loved it. I think it's the more stylish tank, and I personally didn't mind spending quite a lot of money, £500 or £600 upgrading it to make it the better tank. So personally, if I was going to set up a tank today, I would buy the Fluval Evo and spend a lot of money upgrading on it, simply because I think it's a nicer looking tank. But apart from the aesthetics, the main reason to go for a Fluval Evo is if you want to save the £50 on the new price tag, or if you want to buy one second hand, maybe that's had a few upgrades. Now those are my conclusions, but I'd really like to know what you think, so let me know in the comment section which tank you think is best and which one you'd buy. And if I've missed anything, let me know in the comment section too. And if you enjoyed the video, give me a thumbs up and subscribe for next time. And until then, happy reefing.